The most profound limiting belief is that things are not possible. Like that whatever it is that they want is not possible because it doesn't look like what other people say it has to look like, whatever that is. So if you're a health coach who wants to have a business that is holistic in some way, but you think it's too woo, I'm just going to pick on that as an example. And you're like, that's not what people want. They just want their meal plan, their exercise plan, and that's it. They don't want me to get into any of their relationship stuff. They don't want to do that, but this is what you really want to do. Then see it as possible and then start to create actions toward that. What does that mean? Do you need to partner with a relationship expert to make that? Are you interested in being, certified? Because I don't want you out here being a wounded healer, right? Like, make sure that you can take care of the people that you're here to serve. But what are you willing to do to make that possible? Because I do believe we create our own realities. And I think that that's the higher level of that limiting belief is people feeling like reality just is what it is, and the possibilities are so minimal because they weren't born a certain way, or they don't have a silver spoon, or they don't have access to certain circles.
Welcome to another episode of the Health Coach Academy podcast. I'm your host, Omar Cumberbatch of OmarCumberbatch.com. As always, appreciate you joining in, listening to what's new and good in the health coaching space. And today we have a magnificent guest. I'm so excited to share her with you. Her name is Naketa Thigpen, and she is killing it out there. She is fastly becoming one of my favorite people on earth because she just delivers so much motivation to all entrepreneurs and professionals who are really trying to just get in that mindset of accomplishing what they're truly passionate about doing. So she's going to just kill it today. I had a wonderful time with her. And I'm also on her show. So that should come out, I think, next month. So I'll just keep an eye out on that and show some love on her podcast for sure. You will not be disappointed. It's really an interesting podcast that touches a lot of similar things that we talk about in the business world. So definitely take a listen to her. And what I wanted to also just get into as well is that the course is out, and our buddy Isaac Ho, who has been on the show multiple times, and we've done a little bit of back and forth banter about many different things in the health coaching space, suggested that I do a show specifically on the course. So I'm going to do that next week. It's going to be really interesting. I'm going to have a buddy of mine come on the show. Her name is Kim Hines. Most health coaches are familiar with Kim. She's killing it on Instagram, and she's going to be interviewing me about the course and getting into the nitty gritty about it. So yeah, that's going to be something that's coming out next week. So I just want to give you a heads up, because that's one other thing that I think I made a mistake as far as launching. I didn't really have a true launch. And one of the things that Isaac recommended was that I share the elements of the show, get, that on my show. Like, I mean, this is what I have a show for, right? Like I should have profiled a little bit, and instead of just glossing over the fact that I do have a course. So you're going to get a whole lot more details about what the course is, what it entailed, why I made it, why I think that it's beneficial to health coaches to take a peek in, and a little bit of background of what I do behind the scenes at the Health Coach Academy podcast, as well as my other podcast. This podcast burns fat. So let's jump into the show. Appreciate you. Hey, Naketa, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I am magical, Omar. How are you?
I am trying to be magical right now. I'm fantastic. So that's a start. So I'm trying to get to where you're at, because I know you're just killing it out there. And I really appreciate you sharing these moments with my audience, the health coaches out there who are trying to establish themselves in the business world. So I just want to give you an opportunity for us to get to know you a little bit better, a little bit about your origin story.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you want to start? Because, from our previous conversations off here, I can go very deep, real fast.
Well, you know what? I'll help you out, because one of the things that I did, doing my research, aka stalking out your website
right.
and stuff like that. You were a licensed clinical social worker at one time, right?
Yeah, I still am. I still carry my license. I don't practice as a psychotherapist and trauma specialist in a traditional manner anymore, but I still carry all of the heavy hitter.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So I guess we could start there because that's something that I like. I know a lot of health coaches are maybe in the transition of doing that 9 to 5 job, and you had something similar to that, and then you had made the entrepreneurial jump. So maybe we'll start in that perspective right there, and then we can just dive
Yeah.
into some other things.
No, absolutely. So, my foundation is a licensed clinical social worker and trauma specialist. Like that's the core of who I was professionally before I transitioned into entrepreneurship. May of this year will be 12 years ago.
Hmm.
So I'm dating myself a little bit, but
Not at all.
and so again, I still carry all of that. I still maintain all of my CEUs. I have a lot of sub certifications as well beyond my LCSW that go deeper into like dialectic behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, like all of that. Because when I go in, I go all the way in. And I
Hmm.
really did love the work that I was doing. I was good at it. I loved it. I just wasn't in love with it by the time I was ready to transition. There was something missing for me. So I'm a healer by foundation, right? Like that's who I am as I live and breathe and move through this earth. But I wasn't necessarily healing in the way that allowed me to be my fullest version of myself. When you
Hmm.
work in a system, as I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast knows, because you have, health certifications. So there are protocols. There are certain things that you are bound to, basically, depending on the type of environment you work in. If you work in a gym as a health coach, they have specific rules and regulations around what you can and cannot do and where the boundary line is in terms of even conversation with your clients. And that's very similar to how it is as a clinician. I can listen to someone's pain and I can hear for where the rooted dysfunction is and kind of help them navigate through that based on where they are in their process. But I'm not a coach as a clinician, right? So I
Hmm.
can't challenge them in the same way that a coach could to question their questions and push them in a more, I don't want to say aggressive because I am a Black woman, so I want to be careful about that, but a
Hmm.
more assertive way where coaching you can get as assertive as you want, right?
Hmm.
Where if you're a clinician, you have to subscribe to a certain modality. Like Gestalt therapy is a traditionally assertive therapeutic model. But if you're not a Gestalt therapist and your clients are not coming to you for that to be, really held accountable with a mirror in front of their face and a more firm way than a traditional like Freudian psychotherapist or Jungian psychotherapist would be, then you could break someone that you didn't want to break, and you have to be really careful. And
Hmm.
I wanted to play with the version of who I needed to be, use the modality that I needed to use to help my clients, whoever was in front of me, get to their outcome in the fastest, most efficient way without breaking them, unless the breaking was necessary. Because I
Hmm.
do believe that sometimes we have to break down to break open in order to get to the other side of our breakthrough and have all those micro shifts that we need. And I come from the hospital world, from crisis centers, medical clinics, all of it. And there's a lot of restrictions because of our insurance, right? Like, let's keep it
Hmm.
real.
Hmm.
There's things where the higher ups are like, nope, we don't do that here, or don't ask too many business questions because you're not a business strategist. But if I needed to ask the business question, or maybe the father in a mother father dynamic was extra stressed and he may have not had the best emotional intelligence and coping skills for whatever the challenge was that they were navigating with, the reason that they came to me in the first place, maybe it was because of some inefficiency in the systems that he had at business. Technically, I, as a clinician, just in that box, I'm not supposed to go down that rabbit hole of, let's ask some questions around where the gap in your system is. But I knew that I could ask those questions. I knew what questions to ask. But my insurance, the system that I was working in, the higher ups were saying, no, you can't do that because you're not a strategist, not on our dime, right?
Hmm.
So that those restrictions made me feel like I was in a unhealthy relationship with the work that I loved, which made it really hard to be in love with the work that I was doing. So I had to break my own box, for lack of another platitude, and really step outside of myself, step outside of the system that had raised me, that had birthed me in the trauma world. And not that I wanted to abandon it or say poo-pah, like, that my clinical acumen, my psychotherapy acumen, my relationship acumen no longer applies. I just wanted to utilize it in a way that would really allow my best self to help other people become their best self. And I knew at the time, at least 12 years ago, in the systems that I was working in, that I couldn't do it without really having to do a whole lot more work with like battling the system than I really wanted to do, quite honestly. I'd rather use my energy to help the people that I'm here to serve. So for me, that looks like me having a beautiful conversation at 1:00 in the morning with my forever lover, my soul's half, my husband, and saying, listen, I don't want to do this the same way that I did it anymore. And I don't necessarily know what that looks like. And so we had a lot of little micro conversations around it. I'm a prayer warrior. I'm an intercessor. I'm very spiritual. So I prayed for the bigger vision, like, where am I supposed to go? Where am I supposed to do? And a few years prior to me becoming an entrepreneur, because this wasn't a quick and fast burnout, and then I left, and 30 days later, I became a billionaire entrepreneur, right? Like, that wasn't maybe that's somebody's story. That wasn't my story. And so in 2009, so a few years before, we didn't start the business until 2011, I had the vision. The vision was downloaded into me. It was very big. It was very overwhelming. It was, quite frankly, Omar, it was scary, because it was this huge opportunity to be my best self. And I kept thinking, because a lot of us have that negative thinking, those schemas and narratives and scripts that we just have for various reasons. I kept thinking, how does little old me, little Naketa Thigpen, like, how do I get from little old psychotherapist helping people, 1, 2, 4, 5 at a time, maybe in some smaller 20 group people, a leader in her clinical social work community. How does she go from that little tiny person to this huge healer? Like, how do I expand that way? So I doubted. I went down the rabbit hole of all the things you could do. I'm super ambitious. So I created more work for myself. I didn't trust that I was already ready for the next step, and each step from there would ready me for the next one. I didn't trust the process at that time. I did all the things you could do wrong. I picked up more jobs, tried to convince myself that I needed more of a type of administrative level of work, more certifications, more degrees. And by the way, in the middle of all this, I was working on a doctorate at the time and a mama of kids and all the things. Like, I had a lot on my plate, a lot of hats I was already wearing. But of course, in true Naketa fashion, that wasn't enough. So, right? Like, so
Wait, let me just, I love this. You're very inspirational, but you just hit on something that I think we all go through. Yeah. Why did you do that? I want to hear it in your words. Why were you like busying yourself? Was it an avoidance tactic, or was it something that you really thought that was necessary at the time to propel you to the next level?
Oh, it was a justified excuse, right? Like, so it was both. It's so funny that I talk about the B word, busyness, all the time. I totally convinced myself that where I was in that moment wasn't good enough. Underline, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't ready for the vision that I asked for, that was downloaded to me, that was unique to me, specific to me, that I didn't borrow, I didn't research, I didn't look at my potential competitors. I didn't even know what that meant back then, because I wasn't an entrepreneur. I didn't look at other people and say, oh, I want their life. This was a vision that was specifically customized and tailored for me, and I still didn't think I was ready. And so the busyness was an escape, right? It was a way for me to not overly focus on all of the negative scripts that I had that was coming up from childhood. Let's be very clear. All of that stuff that was there from the 3rd trimester of my mother's womb till about 7 years old, where those scripts get implanted for all of us. That's where they come. We're listening, we're absorbing. In our little child brains, we're taking what we see, hear, and feel, and we're giving it our own words. We're taking our parents yelling at us or telling us to go sit down, children are to be seen and not heard. We're taking that to mean that our voice, shouldn't have a place, and we have to be quiet. And we take that quiet to a whole nother level. Either the rebellious version, which I'm rebellious by nature. So you tell me to be quiet, I'm gonna start yelling, right? Or we submit. We take the quiet and we become so quiet that even when it's time to speak, we don't have a voice, that we get drowned out by people pleasing and being subservient and not owning our power to make someone else feel like they can shine. And that's what we call service in a very warped and perverted way. So I had all of that stuff, right? Like I come from a very traumatic background. I'm a victim of sexual assault, domestic violence, like all the violences, all the traumas, all the big T's and the little T's. I had 18 traumas before I turned 24 years old, 18 big traumas. So I had a lot of stuff going on that, again, justified excuse for why I gave myself permission to escape, to cope. So I didn't do drugs. I didn't do alcohol. I wasn't promiscuous. I've been with my husband since we were 17 years old. He wifed me up when we were very young. He was smart man, by the way. Like, I had that part. Okay. So society would not have judged me as being off the rails. But the reality is my addiction was stress. And the way that I fed that addiction, that stress was by being busy, by going through all of the loopholes of how many certifications, how many degrees, how many of this, how many jobs. Omar, I will tell you, before I became an entrepreneur, you could not catch Naketa without a minimum of 3 very serious jobs. Minimum, while in school, while wifing, while mothering, and being a community service advocate at her church, and all the other things. That was my norm. And 5 was actually like my sweet spot, but 3
3 was the bare minimum.
3 was the big bare minimum. So of course, when I became an entrepreneur and I packed on some weight, and I was like, whoa, what's happening? Well, honey, you're not running as much as you were. That's one of them. And now you're eating in a different way, like emotional eating became a thing. Like a lot of other things came up when I became an entrepreneur because they got to speak loud. I was quelling them and quieting them with the busyness prior to that. And a lot of it, honestly, was just being real with myself, being honest. And I have to be careful with that word just, because my husband and I joke in a sarcastic way that there is no just, J-U-S-T. It wasn't so simple to just say just, which is why I have to be careful with that. It took a lot of therapy, mentors, coaching, investing in myself, 5 a.m. spin classes, a lot of really looking at my why more than my what to help me. And that wasn't a one-time process. I did so many rounds of that. I stopped my first doctorate. I'm in another doctorate program now, but I stopped my first doctorate program after I was done all the classes while I'm in the middle of the dissertation because the business had started to grow. And I could have absolutely just slowed down and continued it and finished it, 6 years ago. But I said, no, I have to really look at my why. Like, why did you want this public health doctorate that actually has nothing to do, truly? I mean, you could loosely dot it, connect it to what I do in personal development, but it really had nothing to do with the work that I was doing in the world. But there was this part of me that was like, I will always be a doctor, right? Like I grew up saying, I'm gonna be Dr. Naketa. Back then it was Webster, it became Thigpen. And I wasn't really connected to it. So I had to give myself permission to quit something, which was the biggest thing that I had done as an adult in my life, was to give myself permission to quit something that really was an expired expectation that was not serving me at all. And in fact, was actually adding to stress and anchoring me to an addiction that I kept claiming that I was freed from. And all of that began my real work.
Wow, that's a powerful story. You touched on so many different things that I've dealt with. I know the audience has dealt with. It's really amazing. So I give you a lot of credit for taking the time to just face it and do what you have to do. I know quitting is one of the things that a lot of people put themselves down about doing, but sometimes it's like just like a breakup of a relationship that's not serving you anymore.
Right.
It's really just to put things in perspective like that. So thank you so much for sharing those nuggets. That's amazing.
You're welcome. I hope it serves someone, because a lot of us don't give ourselves that kind of permission. Like I talk about permission to pause, release your success, release the things that aren't serving you, all those kind of things all the time. But what we don't talk about is when it's okay to quit something. So literally, so you can make room for what you're really here to do. But that little piece right there is a whole conversation in and of itself that we don't make space for, is what what is our truth? Like, what do we really want? Like, I get a lot of slack, Omar, for the term balance, that other favorite B word. And, because we get people who say, there's no such thing as balance. It's harmony, it's integration, it's synergy, all kinds of different things. And I'm like, it's okay. All of that is semantics. I'm not here to try to convince someone to use a different word, but I want you to think real life, like real life, away from the microphone, away from trying to sound intelligent or any of that. If you're standing up and you literally tilt over, you lose your footing. You don't say, I'm not in harmony. You say, I lost my balance. Yeah. And when you're not living your truth, it's not a harmony issue, although harmony is a bigger umbrella of like where balance fits in. You've lost your balance because we create it. We don't have to find it anywhere. The truth of how we create that balance is by admitting what we truly want in the first place and then creating some boundaries around it so we can achieve it. So if I say that I'm a multi-billion-dollar empire maker in the making, I know that was like a long, big sentence. But if that's what I say that I am, then I got to check my boundaries. Okay, so what am I doing to become that version, that version of my truth somewhere in the timeline that really exists? So how do I become that in this timeline? Well, it's definitely not going to be sitting on the couch for 8 hours watching Netflix, right?
Right, yeah.
It's definitely not going to be stuffing my face with cookies because my husband got on my nerve or he's not giving me some attention and I just don't know what else to do with myself, or I feel really stressed over losing a client or an opportunity or whatever is going on. That means I need some stronger, more expansive boundaries that allow me to reach that truth. And then I'll start to feel more in balance, the balance that I'm creating. So I will say, for anyone who's listening and thinking like, how do I make this business, this health coach business, this other version of the health coach business? Because it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a personal trainer. Maybe that's a small part of what you do. Trauma healing is absolutely integral to what I do, but it's a small part of what I do. I'm so grateful for the license. I'm so grateful for all the certifications and all that. It definitely separates me from quote unquote competition because I can actually serve someone who broke down. Like there's no risk with me, right? Like I'm good on helping them. I'm not necessarily opening up a box that I can't put back together, a Pandora's box, so to speak. However, I'm not necessarily looking for people who have traumatic backgrounds, even though most of the world really does, if you look at it honestly. But I'm not seeking couples. I work with a lot of power couples and potent humans. I'm not saying like, hey, if your marriage is, 2 seconds from being over, come to me. I actually don't work with those people. Like, I don't want to work with you if you're knocking on the door of divorce, because that's not my happy place. Can I do it? Absolutely. I'm qualified, certified, all the things. I don't wanna do that. That doesn't mean that a couple working with me isn't empowered to deal with real challenging situations. We deal with them all the time. As we start to open up the Pandora's box and start to follow the thread or the rooted dysfunction and all the stuff that we do as we're amplifying intimacy and turning up orgasms and all the fun stuff that I love to do, all kinds of crap comes out of that. And I'm qualified to help them, but I'm not attracting the people who are necessarily showing up that way. So if you're a health coach who says, you know what, I don't want to work with the person who's obese, that's okay. Doesn't mean you can't do it. Doesn't mean you'll judge one of your clients or, you have an opportunity to help someone that you want to do it in a different way. It's kind of like a one-off. You can, but it also doesn't mean that that's what your business has to be focused on. Maybe you want to work with optimal athletes and take them to the next level of optimization. That's okay too.
Well, you just brought up a great point because, again, coming out of the certification, I think we tend to naturally have an idea of a scarcity mindset where it's like, oh, I have to help everybody, and then you kind of fall into pockets of topics that you may not traditionally go into, especially if you have like this abundance mindset, knowing that there's other possibilities out there. Is that accurate, or can you speak about that a bit?
Yeah, I think it's a huge relevant aspect of what you're doing with your community, period. Like we could full stop right there, because you're helping people understand that there's another side to the existence that they're in right now when they feel so disconnected. The abundance mindset I know a lot of people talk about it in relationship to money. I'm also a metaphysician, so I'm very mindful of that. And I know everyone doesn't get with the woo, but woo is a huge part of who I am. And in metaphysics, abundance is definitely not just about money. It includes money. We like money. We love money. Money's a great tool. It serves us well. It allows us to be altruistic and a philanthropist and serve the world in so many different ways. But if I have all the money and I don't have my health, there's a huge challenge there, right? That means I'm lacking abundance. I'm on the other side. I'm in scarcity with my health. I'm thinking that in order to have all this money, that I have no room to work on my health. I have no room for the stretching, the mobility exercises, the cardiovascular, the hip opening, like all those things. I'm thinking that I don't have time for that. So I've convinced myself that this is my reality. And eventually it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I have a lot of money to pay for all the healthcare because I'm not able to make space for the health. And I'm picking on that because of the specific audience that you have. But let's apply that to our spiritual development. If I believe that I have all the money because I don't go to church on Sunday or a Bible study on Wednesday or a synagogue on a Saturday or whatever, if I believe that I'm making money and I'm good without God, then I've convinced myself that God doesn't have a place in my life. So when something happens and then I now need God, I feel guilty about asking for some ethereal presence to help me with maybe my sick child, to help me say the right thing to someone that I'm really challenged with having a crucial conversation with. When the reality is there's an A-N-D. And this is where I live, Omar. I live in the space of A-N-D in parentheses all the time. You'll see it everywhere you follow me. You'll always see and, or most of the time, and in parentheses, in bold, italicized, because it's so important to not limit yourself to thinking that you have to do an or all the time. You don't have to have an or. You do have to have boundaries. I can't watch, I'll pick on the 8 hours of Netflix because I'm coming off a vacation, right? So I can't have 8 hours of Netflix and have space to serve my team and have good energy, and to serve my clients and have good energy and good space for the sacredness that I create for them, so they feel comfortable and confident that everything they give me not only lives with me in complete discretion, but is there purposefully, not just for like a gossip hour. They're not paying me thousands of dollars to gossip, right? They want to know that I have the energy capacity for it. So I have to have boundaries for that. So the moderation of that is, what? If my husband and I want to turn on some Frasier and that's what we want to laugh ourselves, as we prepare for our nighttime routine for sleep, that half an hour, that's okay. But 6, 7, 8 hours, maybe not so much if I really want a juicy and life. So it's really looking at what serves you, what lights you up. And I know a lot of people who are in a space of overwhelm and imposter syndrome and burnout have a really difficult time looking at what lights them up, because there's a kind of apathy, which is a lack of interest or disinterest that comes up when you are in a depressive state, even if it's situational. If your business isn't doing well, if you're questioning everything that's happening in a negative way, like why me instead of why not me? Like if you're looking at it that way, then it's really hard for you to be sparked by even things that would normally light you up. Sex is mundane. Dating doesn't feel good. Food loses its color and its taste, right? Like when you're not interested. So you have to honestly be intentionally selfish. You got to call your power back into yourself. For me, being intentionally selfish is giving yourself the gift to create joy. It's the spaciousness. It's a personal and intimate gift that you give yourself. It's not to be in high ego, to put other people down, to make people feel like, you're so much higher than them that they can't possibly spend time with you. But it is saying, who has earned the right to have my energy? Those are the people that I give it to in moderation. I'm talking about your kids too. Even the little people. I mean, if they're an infant, they can't hold up their own head. That's a little bit different. There's a lot more energy that has to go into that. But your middle schoolers on up, you can really cultivate a different relationship with them by showing them the boundary more than you can tell them the boundary. And of course, you can do this with your adult siblings, your adult peers, your clients. If you pride yourself on being available 24/7 for your clients, what are you showing them? You're showing them that you have no life, that you're at their beck and call, that there's no boundary. So they can come to you even when the joy does start to spark again for you. So if you're hiding in the availability and giving them so much access, you have to look at what you're not giving yourself in lieu of doing this, and what kind of scarcity is coming up for you that you think the only people that will work with you, are the ones that need to have access to you 24/7 or even 12 hours a day. That's a lot. I love my clients. And in parentheses, I don't want to talk to nobody 12 hours a day. Not even the man that I sleep with for the last 28 years. Okay?
No, absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought up the issue of or the word of selfish, because I know that a lot of people have a negative connotation with it. I think that you've touched on it to actually sway our opinion of it for sure. You've written a book about it. Mm-hmm. Can you just dive into it a little bit more just to really get into it? Because I know as soon as we see the word selfish, there is an element of guilt, especially when it comes to just, like you said, your family, your business. Just see how we can actually improve our ability to be a little bit more selfish.
Yeah, absolutely. So for all of the people who are brainiacs like I am, I'm a nerd for life. I don't make any apologies for it. The first thing that I had to do when I received, because it was a download as well, when I said, well, what will my first personal book be? Like I had written business books already, but like, what was my personal book? And the word literally showed up visually for me and I could see it and it said selfish. I had a visceral reaction, Omar. I was like, what? Selfish? I'm not, antithesis of that. Like, what? I'm such a giver, blah, blah, blah. And I had to really sit with why that word was there, why it kept coming up. So I did my research. The word selfish got into our lexicon in the 1600s because a Pentecostal, I have nothing against Pentecostal folk at all whatsoever, so hear me with love for everyone who's listening to this, but a Pentecostal bishop, I forget his name, William Wright, something, it's a very simple name. He was approached by a group of parishioners that were women. They were wives, and they were asking for permission, because back in the 1600s, you had to ask for permission to your priest, your pastor, your bishop for everything, basically. That was how we were bound at that time. They were asking for permission to tell their husbands no when they wanted sex at times when they didn't want it. And the bishop responded, and this is how the word gets into our lexicon, with your purpose as a wife is to be available for your husband, and you not being available, you are being selfish. So if your husband wants sex outside of you pushing a baby out of your vagina, or you being on your menses, which you were considered dirty back then for a minimum of 7 days during your menses, regardless of how long it stayed on, any blood was considered dirty on a woman, then those were the only times you were allowed, unless he fell ill and didn't want to have sex. Outside of that, you were supposed to be available because you were basically chattel to your spouse. And the word selfish got into our dictionary literally to keep women as chattel, to keep us bound to that. And these women raise sons, right? These sons become fathers. These fathers marry women who are also taught this, and it goes round and round and round. And now women shame each other with this word and say, oh, you're not available to, do a birthday party for your kid every year and to make it big and fantastical, even though that baby can barely hold his head up. You're not going to, 5 different activities a week. What kind of mother are you? You're being selfish. You can't come to my 3rd divorce party. You're being selfish, right? Like we started to do this with each other, and it become so normal that we now say things like self-care isn't selfish. Taking time for yourself isn't selfish. And I completely disagree. It is selfish. You should be selfish when you're taking care of yourself, because that means you're pausing the expectations of everyone else. You're giving yourself that spaciousness to listen to yourself, listen to your core. What does my body need? What does my heart need? What do my limbs need? What does my mind need? What does my spirit need? What does my life need from me right now? Well, it's probably not to run around and buy gifts and serve and support just so you can make sure that you put deposits into your relationship so they will also come to your party that you also don't want to have, but you feel like you have to because that's the culture of our norms now. And if you're not Instagramming your life, then oh my God, who are you? Like,
Yeah.
I say be selfish. If your self-care isn't selfish, you're probably doing it wrong. Like, you need to do it literally to fill your own cup. So then you can pour from your overflow. You can show up at whoever's whatever because you want to be there, not because you're obligated. You can give your clients additional access to you because you're excited about working with them and doing this project, or maybe they need a little extra TLC from you. And that's okay because you want to, not feeling like you have to because of a scarcity mindset or FOMO or any of the other platitudes that come up for people to make themselves feel better. It's not okay to not take care of you. And yes, that means you have to be selfish. I'm a Christian woman, and I literally say this all the time. Jesus was selfish. When he told those folks, sit here and pray for me, I'm going up on the mount to pray for myself. This is what I have to do. He stopped all the miracles. He wasn't walking through letting people touch the hem of his nothing because he needed to build himself up to get ready for the greater work that he was about to do. That moment was considered selfish because he stopped giving. He stopped giving access to everyone in that moment because he had something important to do. And typically the only time we give someone the opportunity to say it's okay for me to be selfish is when we're in the hospital with an IV in our arm. Then that's when folks will say, oh, I'm so sorry, Omar. Like, you need to take better care of yourself. It's okay to say no. Did you say that yesterday when you asked me for $2,000? You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how that word has been demonized, and I'm hoping that you are successful in rebranding it, because I think that everyone will have a better life if they did take it in a different context than they're taking it now, for sure.
I hope so. It's also honestly why I say be intentionally selfish. Like, the intention is there to give yourself the stores that you need to build yourself up, not be, selfish 24/7 where you're like, oh, I'm just not available. Because then you're cutting yourself off from life, from joy, from the world. It's being intentional. And whatever that looks like for you. For some people, it's 2 minutes to sit in quiet, to not look at their phone, to not scroll social media, to not answer a phone call or check email, just 2 minutes of deep breathing. You've disconnected yourself from all the overstimulation. You're being intentionally selfish, and that's great. It's wonderful. Intentionally selfish lovers have the best sex. Because let me tell you, if you are making love to a human who is bold enough and selfish enough to say, not right there, over here, do it this way, so you can hit their spot and make them climax and do all that, what do you think you're going to get in return? Some real good reciprocity and loving versus someone who's just being complacent and letting you do whatever it is, making some fake noises, pretending that this is what it is, or being okay with doing the same thing the same way for the last 10, 15, 20 years. That becomes mundane. That's when you start to be like roommates and you start to resent the relationship you have with maybe a really good human who doesn't feel good for you anymore. You have to take some stock in that and look at, what are you not giving to this relationship? And maybe what you're not giving is your right to be intentionally selfish, to really look at what you truly need.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great examples there for sure. And it's really eye-opening to a lot of people who are dealing with that issue with that particular term. So I had a feeling we were going to need a part two, and I'm looking at the time, and we did definitely need a part two. And yeah, we'll definitely chop it up on another occasion. I'd love to have you back, because I think we definitely touched on a lot of stuff regarding like mindset and just really the perspective of things that we need to overcome, just even foundationally to become an entrepreneur. But I think maybe to just kind of wrap it up, like, what do you think is the most prevalent limiting belief entrepreneurs have right now, and how can they overcome it?
That is such a powerful question. Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
The most profound limiting belief. I want to sit with this in my spirit for a moment and just be mindful of the time.
Yeah, no, please do.
I would say the most profound limiting belief is that things are not possible. Like that whatever it is that they want is not possible because it doesn't look like what other people say it has to look like, whatever that is. So if you're a health coach who wants to have a business that is holistic in some way, but you think it's too woo, I'm just going to pick on that as an example. And you're like, that's not what people want. They just want their meal plan, their exercise plan, and that's it. They don't want me to get into any of their relationship stuff. They don't want to do that, but this is what you really want to do. Then see it as possible and then start to create actions toward that. What does that mean? Do you need to partner with a relationship expert to make that? Are you interested in being, certified? Because I don't want you out here being a wounded healer, right? Like, make sure that you can take care of the people that you're here to serve. But what are you willing to do to make that possible? Because I do believe we create our own realities. And I think that that's the higher level of that limiting belief is people feeling like reality just is what it is, and the possibilities are so minimal because they weren't born a certain way, or they don't have a silver spoon, or they don't have access to certain circles. Everybody is making up everything. That Peloton was an idea. They took something and made it into something, put a sticker on it, and now it's the biggest thing since sliced bread, right? But it's a regular old physical therapy bike, y'all. Like, you know what I mean? And that physical therapy bike was a regular old bike that someone decided to make stationary and stable. You can create whatever you want, the right partnerships, the right belief system, and the right boundaries.
No, agreed. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I thank God for the internet every day, because people can see that things that you would never imagine. And no offense to your company, but one of the things that I was really excited about sharing you with is because you work with power couples. Like it's a market that, man, I knew I could never think of that, or think that there may be a need for that. And obviously look at how uber successful you are, and being able to have that vision downloaded into your being and able to just ride with it. And I'm sure that was the furthest thing from your imagination when you first started. And here we are.
Absolutely. You're 1,000% right. I can't agree with you more. I will say for us, power couples isn't money. Money is helpful because I am not a basement level balance and relationship advisor. Like, you cannot get me for $50 and a sandwich. It doesn't work like that. However, for us, power couples are philanthropic. They're influential in their industries, and they are advocates for disproportionately affected humans. So if that's how you qualify to work with me in terms of the power couple kind of definition of that. Yes. I don't care if you're Beyonce and Jay-Z, big up to them. We think they're great humans as well. But if they don't meet those characteristics, if they're not doing those things, then they're not for me. And I will gladly take the call, and I will gladly push that check across the table to someone in my circle of reciprocal influences, what I call my quarry, and have someone that's better served for them, because I know who I want to play with and who I serve best.
Wow. See, well, that's an even more powerful thing about the mindset of abundance, that you could turn away a check from Beyonce and Jay-Z and stick to your principles and who you really enjoy. It just shows that you've attained an element of abundance and abundant mindset that many of us haven't yet, and you may never will. But we hopefully, by mimicking your path, we'll be able to do something that's close and be happy in what the people and the clients that we serve.
I appreciate you, Omar.
Likewise. So listen, like I said, we need a part 2. In the meantime, can you give us your information so that people can get to know your business a little bit better? And obviously you have a podcast, you have books, you have all these things that are wonderfully going on in the world. If you get just give us an opportunity to check up on you. And if you could share that information right now, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to go is our corporate website, which is thigpro.com, THIGPRO.com. pro.com. It kind of links through the funnel of all the things. You can get access to, a page about me and where I come from and all of that. You can get access to a complimentary book. You can go directly to aselfishbook.com and get a free PDF of Selfish: Permission to Pause, Live, Love, and Laugh Your Way to Joy. It's my survivor's memoir that I welcome everyone to just receive. That's the best way I could say that. And Balance Boldly podcast, that's my baby. You will see Omar on the BBP, by the way, guys. So checking for him there as well. Balance Boldly podcast is all about creating work, life, and love that works for you.
Awesome. Appreciate your time today. Thanks again for all these wonderful nuggets of advice and inspiration, and have a great rest of the day.
You too.
Hope you enjoyed listening to today's episode of the Health Coach Academy podcast. If you did, jump over to iTunes and leave a rating and or review. It goes a long way in helping get this message out to our fellow health coaches and people in our industry. Also, if you can, jump over to my website, omarcumberbatch.com, where I give out a lot of freebies, including my 5-day sugar challenge for people who are having issues with sugar. And also for health coaches, I have the book, Hidden. It's the 6 not so obvious ways to get your clients unstuck. Have a great day.